Welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones, and today's guest is Stephanie Natchik. She is a registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and certified runner coach with over a decade of experience helping thousands of runners improve performance, optimize body composition, and move away from restrictive or dysfunctional approaches to food and exercise. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Dana.
I appreciate it. Can you share a little bit about yourself and what led you to this career?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my journey to becoming a dietitian really started with a love of food. And I grew up, with a mom who loved to cook and was really good at it. And so I learned to cook, and I like to think I'm, not half bad. So I spent so much of my childhood in the kitchen and doing things like that with my mom that when I had the opportunity to study nutrition further with that, which actually started for me when I was in high school. My high school had a nutrition program, which is very unique. And so that really led me to become interested in the science of nutrition as well. And not just, kind of the culinary part and putting meals together, but actually like, why do we need certain things in our diet, and what's the value, and what does food really give us? And so when I found out what a registered dietitian was, it was like fast track, like, blinders on. This is what I'm doing with my life. And I was just really fortunate that, I was getting into school at a time that there wasn't as much competition as there is today for some of those internship spots. And it just was something that was accessible for me. And so, the rest is kind of history. And then as I got into university and was studying nutrition more formally, I got into fitness, from a personal perspective first, because I think is true for most of us. We get into these coaching or kind of, personal training industries because we like it and we discover a love of it for ourselves. And it really, was something that I felt like blended well with my love of nutrition and educating people and helping people. And so, by the time I graduated, I knew that my track was going to be sport nutrition and working with athletes.
That's great. I love it because as athletes, I don't think we really know a lot about nutrition. I imagine things have changed. But since I was a young athlete, there was not a lot of discussion about how to eat, what are the right things to eat for recovery. There wasn't, it was more like, we just finished a game, let's stop at McDonald's because that's the only thing that we can hit on the way home,
Yeah.
which was not fantastic.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much my experience in terms of nutrition. How are you seeing, because you've been doing this for a while, what are the changes that you're kind of seeing in terms of athletes paying attention to their nutrition now?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's more at the forefront of conversations than it ever has been, right? It's definitely increasing in interest and growing as something that not just, the upper 1% elite athletes or professional athletes are looking into for themselves. And it's twofold that, certainly as athletes of all levels of sport, we need to fuel for our performances, right? And that is exactly what you mentioned. Like, it's the recovery nutrition, it's the intra-run fueling, it's understanding gels or sports drinks and hydration and all of that kind of stuff. But we're also all human beings at the end of the day, right? We all need to wake up in the morning, go to the kitchen, and choose something to eat. So there's also this shift as well for people who want to learn how to eat and fuel their bodies just day to day in the context of being an athlete, but just understand that day-to-day nutrition to a higher degree for things like whether it's injury prevention or maybe long-term chronic disease prevention, or it is, helping with recovery between sessions. I mean, again, since I was applying to dietetic programs and internship programs, the number of applicants, right, which just shows the interest in getting into this field has just absolutely exploded.
So what is the relationship between nutrition and chronic stress?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, right? Because everything in our bodies requires energy and requires nutrients, right? All of our body's cells, all of the recovery processes, the immune system's process of, the initial inflammatory response that we have to damage or stress, and then the healing processes that they take place second to that. All of these things require energy and require nutrients, whether that's protein or vitamins and minerals and polyphenols and things like that. So when we're in a state of chronic stress and that chronic exposure to stress on the body, whether that's coming from high training demands or other life stress, lack of sleep, etc., if our nutrition is not providing those building blocks or those tools that our body needs to be able to repair and to be able to recover effectively, and we can't keep up with that demand, we're going to see the effects of that chronic stress eventually deteriorate our bodies and lead to long-term issues.
And so how does that show up?
Yeah, so I mean, we can see it as difficulty recovering after training sessions. So we can be sore longer, takes days for us to feel back to normal after a hard workout or a strength training session. We can see our immune system start to suffer in that we're more susceptible to getting sick, whether it's, cold and flu season and getting more of those upper respiratory tract infections. We might find that we're also lacking in sleep and having difficulties with sleeping, which again is going to turn into poor recovery. And then we're also going to have a harder time improving our performance and body composition over time. So it just makes us more susceptible to long-term illness and injury, which of course is going to detract from our performances.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about protein and it has become a new thing for me. I'm sure it's not a new thing for you. And I know I was having a discussion with my son and we were talking about how much protein you should be taking in. And when I started kind of doing the math, I realized I was running really short of what my body needed. And so, what kind of conversation do you have with your clients in terms of that? Because of course, my thought was, well, I'm supposed to be eating, I get 1 gram for 1 pound because I'm in the US. And so, okay, well, that's a lot. Like,
Yeah.
how do I jam in 100 and something grams of protein every day and still eat a well-rounded plate, like have my fruits and vegetables and get in my fiber because of course I'm a female of a certain age. And so they're telling you should have, between 40 and 50 grams of fiber a day to help, whatever.
Yeah.
So it feels like a lot of damn eating and it becomes a job. Like, so how do you get people to not feel like they're being held hostage and forced eating?
And I think the thing is at first, like it kind of is a job, right? So the thing is, when we're talking about protein and, kind of making it all work together, the reality is that we are learning a new skill, right? Creating these better nutrition habits is just like anything that we have to learn over time. And so at first, it is going to feel like a lot of work and it's going to feel like a job to figure out what foods make sense for you, figure out that meal timing, figure out what portions are going to help you hit those goals and targets for the day. But what I want people to really understand that the learning curve can feel really steep, but it's not going to feel that hard forever. Once you figure out a couple of breakfasts that are going to give you the 30 grams of protein that you need in the morning and, the 8 or 10 or 12 grams of fiber that you're looking for. Once you have a few kind of go-to things in your rotation, then you can kind of like check that off. You've got the habit formed and, then maybe you can work on the next meal or just take it one step at a time. Putting that intention though into the planning part of your meals and thinking ahead of, okay, what am I going to eat to hit my targets for the day or for the week or for that meal, I think is so undervalued in that we look back at the end of the day and we're like, oh no, I only got to 72 grams of protein. What am I going to do at 8 o'clock at night? And the reality is, well, we should have been thinking about this at 8 a.m., not 8 p.m.
Right. Yeah. And I know, like, because that's I've been there. And I also, well, and part of my issue for at least me is that I was also raised in that time where you do more exercise and less food intake
Yes,
to maintain your weight.
absolutely, absolutely. And this whole concept of like, eat less, move more, certainly there are people outside of sport, outside of especially endurance sport, that is fine advice, right? If we're talking to a sedentary person who is in fact overeating, and they just want to do the basic things to improve their health and reduce chronic disease risk, a great place to start is to do a little bit more exercise and maybe reduce some of the overeating that's going on. But for people who are very highly active, right, when we're talking about an athletic population, we're already moving more. There's not a lot of room to go up in terms of training volume for most of us, right? We're doing the absolute most we can. And so when we're cutting down the calories trying to achieve weight loss, what we can actually do is wind up in something called a state of low energy availability. And what that means is that we're not getting in enough calories, especially carbohydrate calories, which are the body's main source of fuel, especially during high intensity exercise. We're not getting in enough energy to support both the demands of our training as well as our basic body functions. So all the things that we were talking about with your first question around chronic stress and like what body systems are breaking down in response to that low energy availability is essentially everything. It's our immune system, it's going to be our muscle health and our recovery, our joint health, our ability to repair those tissues, our brain function and, mental capacity, all the way down to things like making it harder to improve body composition over time. So back to your comment about needing to like check off all of these boxes nutritionally and like how do I get it all in? I think a lot of times the reality is that people have to make peace with they're going to be eating more food than they ever thought they needed because we come from this mindset of needing to minimize our food intake. And so people see
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, what does 100 grams of protein a day plus 25 grams of fiber look like? It shocks people, but that actually isn't too much food for you, especially if you're an athlete.
And part of it is just like, I wonder now, having this information now and thinking back 10 years ago when I was training for half Ironmans and not eating properly,
Yeah.
but not understanding, feeling like shit, but not quite understanding why I felt like shit because I just went out and did a bike ride and I was going to meet some friends and we're going to do 40 miles. And I had like a piece of toast and two eggs and I was like, I should be good.
Yeah.
And then totally bonking in the middle of it and thinking, oh, I just didn't take my gel at the right time or whatever. And
Yeah.
not realizing that I was so nutritionally deficient to start off with
Yeah.
that there was no way that ride was ever going to feel good.
Yes. Or thinking, and I think this is a trap that so many people get caught in, or thinking that the problem is that you would have an easier time if you were lighter, right? Like people think
Always.
that, yeah, if I could just drop 5, 10, 20 pounds, whatever it might be, then I would be fit enough that these workouts would feel so easy and I would have a much easier time executing the workouts. But you can see where this becomes a little bit of a rock and a hard place that like we're underfueled, we can't perform well, and we're going to have a much harder time improving body composition and can even lose muscle in the process if we're chronically underfueled, right? That ceiling for performance is so much lower when we're not taking in the energy that our body needs.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. Well,
I had no idea.
there's estimates that 70% of athletes are underfueling, like not necessarily to the degree of like diagnosable energy deficiency, but 70% of athletes are not meeting their nutrition requirements. And as you can imagine, endurance athletes are at much higher risk. Women are also at much higher risk, but endurance athletes than the rest of the population, like, than people who do other sports.
So you mentioned focusing on a meal at a time to make some changes. What are some other practical steps that people can take to get that balance between their nutrition and recovery?
Yeah. So really like focusing your efforts around the time of day that you're most active. So rather than trying to follow a meal schedule or timing or, doing things that you see on the internet that like other people are suggesting, and of course, intermittent fasting being a very popular thing to do, people have their eating windows and whatnot. But instead of going by what someone else is recommending or promoting, looking at your training schedule and thinking, okay, when am I most active throughout the day? So then planning around your intra workout, if needed, fuel, and your post workout meal, and starting there. Because that is when your body most needs energy and nutrients, and everything from carbs for actually completing a high intensity workout all the way through to the recovery portion and getting those nutrients in for recovery. And if you can consistently start by nailing that first, then work your way out to the other meals throughout the day and kind of optimize those as you go. But really focusing in on that is going to kind of pay off the quickest in terms of improving the quality of your training sessions, right? You're going to see those immediate results in that you're going to eat more fuel before you start the workout and then have a great workout, which is fantastic for buy in from the athlete. But then also, a really well balanced, high protein and carb post workout recovery meal does wonderful things for, again, kickstarting those recovery processes, but also improving appetite regulation for the rest of the day. So, organically, we can see improvements in cravings, binge eating,
Mm.
those feelings of being so out of control around food later in the day after you've had a long run or workout or something like that, that it's like we don't have to try to eat less or have all of this willpower, things like that. We're just more satisfied because we fueled ourselves better when our body needed it most.
What is the most optimal timing? So pre-workout, and then is there a time limit after the workout that you should be eating?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as possible, but without getting like crazy with it. And the reason is
Mhm.
because right after a workout, our bodies, our muscles are very primed for glycogen repletion. So, glycogen is the carbohydrate that we store in our muscles and use for energy during our workouts. So, right after a workout is when our muscle cells are very ready to take in and replace the glycogen that was burned. So, that sets us up for better quality workouts in the coming days, or especially if you're doing maybe two workouts in a day, you definitely want to take advantage of that muscle glycogen repletion. It's not that the window closes and all of a sudden like muscle glycogen repletion is like turned off and you've missed it or anything, but there is a really good opportunity for quicker recovery and better quality subsequent sessions if we do get some carbs in essentially right away. Protein as well, if you're going to eat something, you may as well pair up carbs and protein together. But what too many people do is they only focus on the protein post workout. They have like, a scoop of whey protein mixed with water as a post workout meal, and then not eat again for a couple of hours. But they're missing that carbohydrate piece. So we want both as part of that post workout meal for optimal recovery as soon as possible, definitely within an hour.
Okay, and then pre, is that up to me and my digestive system in terms of what I can tolerate before, like, the difference between a weight workout and then going for a run?
Well, exactly. And people are very different in this regard. And it also depends on the workout that you have planned. Like as you mentioned, am I doing a, gym session that isn't going to require a ton of muscle glycogen to fuel that strength workout? Or perhaps I am going for a, 60 to 90-minute run that I'm going to be burning through a lot of muscle glycogen in that time. Maybe doing, a 60-minute interval session that I'm definitely going to be really, having a high demand for glycogen during that time. So, you know, there's no hard and fast rule around how much you have to eat or can't eat before a workout, because if you tolerate it and your gut is good, then you're good. Some people need to keep it a little lighter, they need a little more time to digest before they go for a run. Other people that maybe have more gut training under their belt don't have an issue with kind of eating and going. A question that I get a lot is like, well, how long do I need to wait between eating and running? And the answer is there's no downtime required. It's just a matter if, does your stomach give you the go ahead or not?
Well, I feel like a little kid, like, when we were, "Oh, you have to wait a half an hour before you can go into the pool after eating."
I mean, okay, my kid's swimming lesson, we just started swimming lessons this year, and the thing, it still says, like, "Don't eat a big meal with like, before an hour before taking them in the pool." I'm like, "They're 2 years old. They're not actually swimming yet."
Right, they'll be fine.
Pool.
Yeah, so well, and it's funny because speaking of swimming, there is a weird hunger that seems very different than, and maybe it's like a perception of effort between swimming a long distance and then the hunger kind of escalating throughout the day
Yeah.
after the workout versus going on a run or lifting weights or whatever. And I don't know, is that just more muscles moving and so we're just burning more glycogen?
Yeah, and the other thing too, the other element when we're swimming is that we also have to regulate our body temperature a little bit more. So depending on the water that you're swimming in, the temperature of the water, your body can also be having to do a lot more work to keep you warm
Mm,
at the same time, which of course is also going to be a big user of energy. But yeah, the post swim hunger is unlike anything else.
yeah, totally.
Also can't fuel really during it, right? Like for a long swim, like, you're probably gonna be going straight through with maybe a, sip of a sports drink here or there, but you're mostly gonna be going, without a lot of intra workout fueling.
Yeah, definitely, like, shout out to, Diana Nyad and trying to figure out fuel to swim for whatever it was, how many hours
Yeah.
that she was out there, or the people that swim across the channel, because
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to swim and eat at the same time and
Yeah.
keep myself fueled.
Well, even just the most recent, Summer Olympics, I guess that was 2 years ago already, I was watching a lot of swimming, and I thought to myself, "I wonder what the longest swimming distance is in the Olympics." And it's like a 10-kilometer swim or something. Like, it is, I mean, and
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not a
long.
swimmer, so, like, this to me is unbelievably long and challenging. Like, I watched the entire thing with my mouth hanging open. I was
Yeah,
just
no,
so
it's
impressed.
crazy. I
So
mean, to
impressed.
swim that long
Yeah,
and that fast for that long,
unbelievable, unbelievable.
yeah, and you don't see everybody is rail thin because they're burning a shit ton of calories.
In, like, the river.
Yeah, no, it's nuts.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very enlightening. How do people get in touch with you and if they want to ask questions or do some work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are listening to this and you are recently discovering sport nutrition for yourself and you want to learn more about this whole area of how it can improve your performance, I also have a podcast. It's called the Fuel Run Recover podcast. You, of course, can find that on all podcast platforms. And then you can also connect with me over on Instagram. I'm at Steph the Runner's Dietitian, and my website is www.stephanienatchik.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Dana.